Hello and namaste. My name is Tim Halloran and this is a weekly astrological forecast, this being for the final week of May 2014. And today is Sunday the 28th. The sun's in Gemini, moon's in Aries. Tonight she'll move into Taurus. Tuesday she moves into Gemini. Then Wednesday we have the new moon in Gemini. Friday the moon will move into Cancer and then into Leo on Sunday. Okay, so we're talking about a new moon in Gemini on this report, which is exactly square to Neptune, which is in the sign of Pisces. So, as we move into the highly energized month of June, yes, the last month has been a little bit slower. A lot of people have been complaining about feeling lethargic and not unmotivated as Mars did his retrograde over the last several months. Well, last week Mars turned direct, and now Mercury is slowing down, about to turn retrograde on the 7th of June. So we're in this sort of very weird in-between phase where gears are starting to slow down and speed up. So yes, this is the period where you don't want to be, doing any fancy computer work or stuff like that. And a Mercury retrograde, as I always have to say, is not just about technology failures and those kind of things. Mercury goes very, very deep, and it is more than just, technology and communication and data and, bits of information and stuff like that. That is just one aspect of it, okay? But what I'm really talking about, what I'm seeing coming in June, is like it can be sort of like a psychedelic trip. With this new moon in Gemini square Neptune in Pisces, Gemini, Pisces, these are the two trickster, dualistic, mutable signs of the zodiac, and when they're working together, this can be like magic tricks, okay? So what I'm thinking is, this month of June, depending on our the intent that we put into it, depending on our understanding, dependent on our set and setting, dependent on what we want to use this period and this energy for, will determine how possibly medicinal, healing, or potentially confusing or scary the month of June will be, as all these things get really, really far out and sort of, otherworldly and, surreal, okay? So, there's a number of aspects going on this week that I want to focus on to give us advice as far as the intention that we're moving forward into the month of June with, because I see this being a period that really could backfire so much if we just want to bolt the gun, just jump the gun right now and, act very brashly and spontaneously. This is a period where we can sort of be seeing the underlying subconscious tendencies, especially going back to the male-dominant patriarchy, that are now spewing forth spontaneously. And, it's important for us not to act so brashly as these feelings come up, because what's actually happening is we're transitioning into a period that's going to be much more oriented and based upon the feminine. I mean, that is really the long-term, real reason that we have incarnated in this entire life, is we are in the transition of the ages, which is always a somewhat tumultuous, energized period, because everything is changing and transmuting. But what we're talking about here is downloading the feminine. Moving into the feminine means exposing how the masculine dominant era created a framework of the feminine that is highly distorted, highly illogical, and so we, being conditioned for many thousands of years in the past, have this framework of the feminine that is highly distorted. It's not true. And so what happens is, as the feminine is coming back to us and we're discovering our own feminine energy and our own psychic nature and our own empathy, our own compassion, and these channels are being reopened, is it can seem very frightening, very scary, because we don't understand what's going on. We have forgotten what real feminine energy is. We don't even know what it is. So it can sometimes scare us. It can intimidate us. We cannot know entirely what's going on. Okay? So the focus of this report with this new moon in Gemini is, Gemini is still a highly individual sign. Although it is the sign of friends, neighbors, consciousness, it is the sign where we really begin to expand our channels to other people. It can still be sort of, closed-minded, focused on myself, my left brain, my right brain, what I'm doing. Okay? And as Mars is starting to pick up, what I think can really happen after this month of feeling sort of lethargic and feeling stuck is, now that Mars is coming back, now that the energy is lightening up as we're moving towards Gemini, is people just wanting to bolt and not acting so much on their feelings and intuitions. And what can happen potentially is falling back into the old ways, into the old patterns that already have been deeply chiseled into our subconscious. So that way, if we just start pushing energy back into our body and our energetic body, it's just going to start flowing through the old channels. And we could potentially see that right now. We can see us falling back into especially some of the Martian tendencies that are preventing us from moving forward into this feminine understanding. Because basically what it is we all have to do work. And now that Mars is turning direct in the sign of Libra, and he's going to be conjunct the asteroids Ceres and Vesta, and next month he's going to square Uranus and oppose Pluto. Again, we are changing, we're transforming our own masculine understanding because it has fallacies and those things have to be corrected. But what we're talking about here is, revolution, transforming this, but how is our will changing? How is our Martian energy changing? It is becoming in service to the feminine, to the mother. And that's what this Ceres-Vesta conjunction is. They're both turning direct this week, and they're both conjunct in Libra, and they're both opposing Uranus in Aries. And Venus has been with Uranus in Aries all this last week, and now Venus is moving forward. She's moving out of Aries into Taurus on Wednesday, the day of the new moon. Okay, but she's passing over the south node of the moon first. So what does this mean? What is the tendency that we could possibly get stuck in that's not moving us forward is doing relationships the old way. The way that we have been taught, the way we have been conditioned by culture to do relationships is the male dominant way. I hate to say it, but it's very, Mars and Martian. Even the way people have sex, you have to look at this. The way people have sex these days generally is not the truest, most healthy, most integrated way. It's very male dominant. It's very, very fast. It's all about this instantaneous desire. That's what Mars desire is. I want to be satisfied. I want to be satisfied now. I'm really, really horny. I'm going to come in 2 seconds. And then everything's fine. We can move on to the next thing. And relationships can reflect this in so many ways. Another way can be, oh yeah, my boyfriend and my girlfriend are like a possession that I wear. And their role is really to just support me and brag about me in different friends group. That way we can feel secure about each other. It's all about insecurity. So what's happening, Venus conjuncting the south node, is we can sort of have some of these tendencies be exposed to us. But here's the real kicker. With Vesta and Ceres being conjunct in Libra opposite to Uranus in Aries, we need to watch out for Uranus in Aries, which is that we want to be compulsive, we want to be spontaneous with our Martian desires, which means that we just want to do it by ourselves. And Uranus is very bright, very intelligent. So it's not that it's wrong, it's never about right or wrong, but it's just like, oh, I got this brilliant idea and I'm going to do it and nothing's going to get in my way. And I'm not going to let this happen again. As Mars starts to pick up space, as the energy starts to pick up, and then we just bolt for it, we act brashly, and what could happen very well then is we just fall flat on our face. What's happening right now is there are a number of aspects that are drawing the attention to the feminine. If we are not paying attention to the deeper things that are going on right now, exposing this shift of the paradigm, we are going to fall on our face, because the point is we cannot do it the old way anymore. We have to change. We don't have choices anymore. Yes, so this new moon in Gemini is very much the month of June. We cannot go it alone anymore. Okay, the last new moon was in Taurus, and now that moon cycle is dying, and the new moon cycle is being born. We cannot do it alone anymore. This is not a time to be pushing ourselves away from the people that we truly care about just because they're sort of stepping on our toes and there's interference and things get a little bit more complicated when you're not doing everything by yourself. And that right there is the old patriarchal mentality. That's what's been handed down to us from generation after generation of people, particularly, in the masculine energy for men. It's like my dad's dad was a Great Depression survivor, was a potato famine survivor, and you had to do everything by yourself. If you didn't do the work by yourself, you died. There was no security. So this is deeply ingrained in us, like, oh, no one's ever helping me, I gotta do it alone, I gotta do it by myself, so I'm gonna push you away, I'm gonna push you away, it's not worth the effort, it's not worth the effort. It'd be so much easier if I didn't have interference. And we have to listen for the voice of Uranus, which speaks 10 trillion miles, words per second. And all of a sudden we find ourselves halfway across the state, driving 90 miles per hour before we realize what we have just done, what we have just acted upon. Okay, so we can have these spontaneous, very powerful emotions related to the male energy coming up in upsurges as Mars begins to move forward. But what's happening at the same time is Mercury is slowing down. And June 7th, Mercury will turn retrograde and remain retrograde the entire month of June. So what's happening is if we run forward and we act brashly and we just, pave forward and try to chisel out our own way, well, what's going to happen is Mercury turning retrograde is saying you have missed Cancer. Mercury is going to move into Cancer on Thursday and then turn retrograde and say, you know what, you have to go back. We have to start over this relationship thing. You have to figure out what your mind is in service to. It's not just about this. Things can remain very simple and black and white. Oh, this is good, this is bad, It's like another old patriarchal thing we've all been ingrained with is, going through the school system. Oh, I got an A+, that makes me a good person. Have I checked everything out on my list? If everything's checked off on my list, that means I'm a successful and good person. Therefore, other people with their emotions and their problems and the messiness and the dilemmas are preventing me from checking off my checklist. And so I need to get rid of those people and those problems because they are preventing me from my checklist. And as soon as that list is done, everything's going to be good and I'm going to be happy. And no. That is completely abandoning and missing out and leaving out the feminine principle. And what's happening all right now this week, last week, it's really taking us into this whole month ahead, is we have a grand trine in between Saturn, Jupiter, and Chiron, which is exact now. So Saturn and Jupiter are the two big teacher gurus of astrology. And they are also the part in ourselves where we start to become integrated in society, in the bigger picture. Our culture, our practical function within the bigger picture is ruled by these two planets, Saturn and Jupiter. And being in a grand trine with Chiron, it's saying we need to integrate the selfless, service, compassionate, open-hearted principle with society. That is what is beckoning us. That is what is taking us into these really deep feminine aspects of ourselves. Yes, Ceres conjunct Vesta. I want to be devoted to my family. I want to nurture and be nurtured. Yes, children is a wonderful thing. This is how we preserve our humanity. Not by making money and bringing in loads of goods and checking off everything on the list. That way we can buy a new television. That is not preserving humanity. It's actually unconsciously destroying it. It's by focusing on the emotional, subjective, intimate sphere, we start focusing on what truly matters. When we start focusing on our relationships to other people and the feelings that connect them, we start focusing on what actually matters. And if we are disregarding those things and we want to throw all that away, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And we're going to realize that we have an empty cup come the full moon in Sagittarius the second week of June. And then we're going to have to do the work and go back in the retrograde. Whereas this retrograde can be very positive. This retrograde can be a really good opportunity for us to see the full spectrum of how these emotions, our own mental conditioning, how the old paradigm, how our parents, how the schools, how the structure formed our minds, formed our intellect, formed our structure for operating within the greater society and the bigger picture. Okay, so Mars moving forward all this week, starting to pick up space, then he's going to conjunct Vesta and Ceres in the weeks ahead, square Pluto, oppose Uranus. We have to incorporate the feminine principle. We have to incorporate devotional service, loving compassion towards our friends, towards our family. They are all our family. Yes, Gemini is so much more than just technology and beep, 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 and mundane black and white mentality. This is a very shallow understanding of Gemini and Mercury retrograde. What it is the tubes, the connections, the subtle umbilical cords between us and all other people. Each of us all are mothers. And our ability to nurture ourselves and other people and provide compassion for ourselves and other people is the feminine aspect that is missing. So we're getting in tune with it. And Venus moving into Taurus on Tuesday, Mercury moving ahead into Cancer on Thursday before he remains stationary in the sign of the mother. This is giving us an opportunity to discover our own wills, our own masculine energy, where it could have become distorted, where it could have been conditioned in a wrong way, that could have led us into selfish tendencies that actually just make us feel really bad and unfulfilled. It's like we've been conditioned to believe that being selfish is good. Oh yeah, achieve and succeed, be macho and, you know, dog-eat-dog world, so you got to survive, so make sure you have a big paycheck. You know, this is what makes a miserable person. As soon as we start exposing how that infection has consumed us and start purging it out, which means we can be seeing some of those patterns, and this may not make us feel very good, it can make us feel really bad. But by seeing those patterns and understanding what our true desire is, I don't want to be rich, I want to be in love. I don't want to just have a big widescreen TV and, you know, be alone and miserable and, you know, just jack off to internet porn. No, it's like we've been convinced by this instantaneous sense gratification driven society that, oh yeah, if you lock yourself in your room with your video games, you know, it's all you need, technology, it's so great. Like, this is the negative side of Gemini, and it's saying no. Friends, neighbors, communication, empathy, feelings. This is what makes you a human being. And if we're trying to cut that short, if we're trying to bypass that, or just like even scooch it to the side just so, you know, we can sort of focus on, you know, getting forward a little bit, we just have to be very, very careful. Be very careful this time. Be slow. Focus on your feelings. Don't act too brashly, because people can really get ahead of themselves and sort of charge forward, and then there will be hurt feelings, and it will be much more destructive than it really has to be, when it can be very productive. Just because negative feelings, just because, you know, we're understanding, oh my goodness, the paradigm that I grew up pretty seriously messed up. Got a lot of work to do. Yes, we have a lot of work to do. And this is a time of realizing the work that lies ahead. That being said, we can make this work very positive, and the only way to do that is through devotional service. Why are you doing your work? Are you doing your work for you, or are you doing your work for those you love? That slight difference is not so slight, it changes your entire reality down to the very core of it. Are you happy and satisfied, or are you miserable? That is why we are doing our work in the service of others. We are doing our work in service of the world. So make that our intention for this new moon. That way we're not too confused by that square to Neptune. Yes, we have to be practical. Don't get too ahead of ourselves. Don't try to bolt forward really fast, because this confusion can kind of backfire. We'll get really lost. Things will get really confusing, and we'll be just like, wait a second, what did I just do? Is that right? Now I have to go backwards. Now I have to correct some things. Okay? This is the Mercury being in shadow zone right now, you know? Don't do anything too quickly. Don't try to back up your computer and all the disks because the retrograde begins on the 7th. No, 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 no. Go by your feelings, go by your intuition. Doesn't have to go by the bullet list. The bullet list could potentially mislead us rather than actually help us complete all of the whole integrated bits and pieces that we're all putting together right now. Okay, so I can take a look at your chart for the new moon. You can click the link below. I'm working on a new website. Hopefully I can get it done this week before we get too far into the retrograde, and that will be providing some new information and hopefully, you know, making things a little bit easier for people getting charts, because we've had a lot of issues coming up with that, with Mercury being in its shadow phase right now. Okay, so we have a lot of stuff to look forward to, and, you know, I look forward to seeing you. So, you know, let me know how you're doing. Post some comments, share this video, and I'm wishing you the very best for you and your beloveds. Namaste.